Welcome everybody to the World of Ability Podcast Network. My name is Emily Gomer and I'm a podcast assistant here. Excited to bring you another episode of Workability with Neil Weber and Tim Trojan. Due here every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Central. If you're ever interested in being on a guest on the show or any of the other shows network, please let us know. But nothing further ado, I'll pass it over to Neil to kick us off today. Welcome, Neil.
Hello, thank you, Emily. Appreciate that. Yes, I would like to continue our series of talk about people who have overcome disability. There are approximately 40 individuals from the Grand Avenue Club, which is an organization I belong to, and it has several purposes. Its one purpose is to provide work, for the members. Usually, it's part-time, temporary employment for the members, and they are paid for this work. And it is usually not through the Grand Avenue Club, but it is through the employers themselves. So employers from regular work, whether it's Foley and Lardner Law Firm or Outpost Natural Foods or firms like that provide work that do that. And the organization has existed since 1991. It was founded by Rachel Foreman, and it is a force for good in the Milwaukee area. Approximately 40 members have overcome disability from the organization from this handicap, and there is approximately 1,500, over 1,500 members of the Grand Avenue Club. So it is rather unique that members have overcome this disability. And one member that overcame it was named Michael Moabiti. In his early 20s, he came down with I don't know exactly what disease. He came out with this disease, and he came to the Grand Avenue Club. He got very involved in the Grand Avenue Club and worked closely with Rachel Foreman, the founder. And in that service of working at the Grand Avenue Club and working with Rachel Foreman, he was able to face his disability. And through going back to school for nursing, he had originally wanted to be a doctor like his father, but going back to school for nursing, he was able to successfully overcome it. And he currently works in San Francisco as a nurse, and he's been doing that for about 20 years. So, it is possible to overcome this. Most people, though, stay on disability and do not work. A smaller group of people work independently, and they work independently and draw salaries or income from the organization they work for. And some of these people are independently employed. I am one of them. I've been working on Outpost Natural Foods for a little over 2 years and have made, not a sizable, but a significant income from this Outpost Natural Foods. I am in food prep, and I occasionally do dishwashers. So I do that kind of work. So that is the organization I work for. The other part of the organization's work is vocational rehabilitation, and that is what Michael Moabiti has accomplished. He has come to the organization. He was humbled by the disease. He originally, wanted to be a doctor, and he was not able to become a doctor. And so he came to the organization. He's volunteered his time. And in volunteering your time, it is a very humbling experience because it requires you to work for no pay. And whether you're cleaning toilets or you're picking up the trash or you're, whatever you're doing it without pay. And that is a very humbling experience. So he did that for a period of time. And through the process of this service, he was able to worked, I believe he worked some part-time jobs in the process, and then eventually went on to full-time work after going to school. So that was the process he went through. He also was on TV and promoted the Grand Avenue Club, because Grand Avenue Club at that time was a new organization and it needed more funding, and needing more funding, it required promotion. So he did that with working with Rachel Foreman. So that is vocational rehabilitation. So it's part-time work, then vocational rehabilitation, and then in service as a volunteer in the organization, and that's the third component. And so sometimes people do not return to work; they simply volunteer their time, and they work at the Grand Avenue Club as a volunteer. So that is the third component of the Grand Avenue Club. When I was there, membership averaged about 70 to 80 people per day. Then we had COVID, and COVID unfortunately reduced it to 20 or 30, and that's where it stands about right now. It is about 20 to 30. And, people come from all walks of life. Most come from poor family backgrounds, but a few come from wealthy backgrounds, and all of them have the disease of mental illness. The tagline for the Grand Avenue Club is a community that works, and so that is what the tagline is. It is at 210 East Michigan, and it is in, I believe, the oldest building in Milwaukee. So that's the Grand Avenue Club. So yes, that's the organization. It has about 15 staff members. 13, 13, I believe, is the number. So that is the number. So yes. So that is the organization. There are other organizations similar to it. One is called Friendships. It's on national, about 15, and it has a similar goal and values, but I found a lot of support and meaning at the Grand Avenue Club. So that's the organization. I would like to talk further about vocational rehabilitation, as I've talked about in the past, about three major successful individuals who came from wealthy families and had a lot of support, and yet had not necessarily mental illness, but they had challenges. John F. Kennedy had Addison's disease, which is, I believe, a disease of the glands. Helen Keller was deaf, blind, and mute, and that was her challenge. And so those were two of them, and I blank on the name of the third. But those were two individuals who suffered from major illnesses and yet came to overcome these. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt had polio, and he had a very positive attitude. His goal in life was to become president, which he eventually did, and served 4 terms, which was unusual because up until his presidency, you were only allowed to serve 2 terms, but it was not written into law. It's not written into the Constitution. So FDR, since it wasn't written in the Constitution or into law, he was able to serve 4 terms. And a number of books were written about him, including The Man He Became. And he had a very positive attitude. He built a resort with money from others and his own personal money. And that resort was in Warm Springs, Georgia. And he once met a fellow polio sufferer, but unfortunately this fellow polio sufferer did not have a good attitude. And FDR commented on that about the man. I think it was a young boy, maybe a teenager, saying this, young boy doesn't have a good attitude. I don't like his attitude. And so I don't know that boy was successful in overcoming polio or leading a successful life, even without polio. There's very few people overcome polio. FDR did to a degree. He was able to walk with a cane. So he went from becoming entirely paralyzed to walking with a cane. And he felt that in order to become president, he needed to be entirely mobile. But it wasn't that the case. What was the case was he had to show the world that he was capable of facing his illness. And that was the key thing that he had to prove to the world. And he did successfully prove to the world that he overcame his illness by being able to walk with a cane. So he had the support of his wife and family, and that was key in overcoming his illness. So those are John Kennedy was first a senator, a U.S. senator, and then later became president. And he founded the Peace Corps, which is still today a internationally known organization. And so that is one of his legacies. He has some unfortunate legacies that we won't discuss today, but he founded the Peace Corps, which is one of his legacies. So that is great. Unfortunately, he was shot in November 22nd of 1963 by an assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, and did not live to complete his presidency. But many people admire him and are proud of him because of what he was able to accomplish. Helen Keller, being deaf, blind, and mute, was very challenged as a young lady. But she had the support of her family, and she had the support of Anne Sullivan, who was her teacher. And between the two of them, she faced her illnesses. And she was able to become a public speaker and writer, and was able to contribute to her own support. Because at the time of FDR, John F. Kennedy, and Helen Keller, there was no public support for the illness. Bill Wilson, who struggled with alcoholism, had to rely on friends and family to support himself because he was not able to support himself. But he found that time in the, leaning on the support of friends was the most happiest time of his life, because he was, obviously he was bereft of money, but he did have the joy of spending time with friends, and that was a very special time for him. So he was not, he did not suffer from, he did not suffer from a disability, but he did in a way, because he suffered from alcoholism. Once he faced it, I believe in the 1940s, he never took another drink. And I think he had what was called a spiritual experience. He had drunk for about 19 years, and yet he was hospitalized. And God came to him in one moment. Most alcoholics experience what is called an educational variety, and that is where God speaks to them over time. But Bill Wilson had God to come to him all at once. It's rather rare. There's only a few individuals that God comes to all at once. And so God came into the room where he was living in the hospital, and it was his alcoholism was taken away immediately. However, he found out later that when he was at a hotel, he was tempted to drink. And so he knew that he had the option of going into the bar and drinking. But he knew if he went back to drinking, he may never stop. So he went right away to the phone book and looked up individuals in the phone book because he knew he was desperate to reach out to fellow alcoholics, because he had learned in his process overcoming drinking that the way to overcome drinking, first of all, was to have an educational experience or a vital spiritual experience. But then the way to stop drinking entirely was to share that message with fellow alcoholics. So he reached out to a pastor, and that pastor put him in touch with a co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. And between the two of them, they founded Alcoholics Anonymous. And in doing so, they helped eventually millions of alcoholics stop drinking. So that is the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. So we have the 150 members of the Grand Avenue Club, 40 members, I'm sorry. We have John F. Kennedy, we have Helen Keller, and we have Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and we have Bill Wilson. So those are all people that faced disability and overcame it. And that is very remarkable, because only a few percentages of people overcome disabilities. It's a very small percentage. That is our show for today. We thank you for listening. And Emily, if you can take us away, we'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Neil, for all of the information.
Sure.
And again, we are here every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Central. And if you're interested in being on the show, let us know and to make that happen. Also, to check out all of our social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and so on. And like, share, subscribe, comment, so on. So until next time, hope everybody has a safe and productive week, and to stay